Welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Vaijanta Anand, Associate Professor with Nirmala Niketan College of Social Work, which is affiliated to University of Mumbai. And I am going to look at this module, Community Assessment Process and Methods, Part 2. We looked at some assessment methods earlier. We will look at some other assessment methods. This module will help you to again look at some other assessment tools which can be used and comprehend the steps and process involved in while using this tools. When you do need assessment, basically let us look at the one aspect which is need assessment. So when you're doing need assessment, you have to keep in mind that needs can be of three types. One is perceived needs. What are the needs which are perceived? People are feeling this is a problem. Okay, so they are seeking expert opinion, which is like a perceived need. Okay, express need is these are the needs defined by the people themselves. So perceived needs are sometimes which you have perceived. You feel this is a need of the community. Okay, or it is defined by people who have done some study in that community. It is their point of view and they are telling you this is the needs of this community. Express needs are basically people themselves are telling you. They are seeking help and telling you that this is a need. Okay, now express need focuses on circumstances in which the feeling is translated into action. Okay, and relative needs are they show the gap between the levels of services which are reaching to various parts of the community. In the same community, in different situation, different kinds of services are reaching probably. So there is a relative need. In terms of needs are not same in the community, even if probably it's a homogeneous. It's very much essential. Basically, when you are working in the community, you have to use lot of symbols. So one of the symbol which is very has been useful is problem tree. So what do you do is problem in your analysis of the problems, you provide a kind of a visual breakdown of the problems into the the symptoms, the root cause and the effects. So what you do is you draw a huge tree where you are saying that trunk is the main problem, roots are the core problems or the causes which is leading to the problems, and branches are the effects. So people are able to visualize their problems in terms of what are the causes, what are the effects and what are their problems. How do you do it is basically what you do is you develop a kind of a framework, and then what you do is you ask the people, identify the problem faced by the people and visualize this problem tree so that it helps the people to analyze and clarify cause-effect relationship. What are the steps involved in a problem tree analysis? Creating a problem tree should ideally be undertaken as a participatory activity. You don't do it, people themselves do it. There should not be too many people. It can be something like 25 people who participate in this process. The first step is, there's a workshop and there's a brainstorming where you identify, okay, these are the problem. You might start with one problem, starter problem, okay, and then you can go on into, various kind of problems, and then you look at hierarchy of causes, okay. You can look at it, okay, what are the causes of this particular starter problem? And then you look at effect of that starter problem. And then you look at similarly various other problems which can be located in the trunk, where you look at the causes located in the roots, and then you look at effect which is located in the branches. This is a tree which you can see. So once all the problems are in place, starting from the starter problem, they are able to draw the arrows showing the key links, and the problem tree can be reviewed and validated by the participants. They might reduce certain problems, or they might realize that okay, some problems are actually causes, some problems are actually effects, they are not problem in themselves. So once completed, the problem tree represents a summary picture of existing negative situation which has to be tackled by the community. One can also do a cobweb analysis, like a spider web, You can, ask the participants to identify a issue, a problem which they are facing, and which they would like to explore, and they can draw a kind of a, factors, indicators which they think contribute to this problem. Once they arrive with a set of indicators, next step would be to draw a pivotal point on a larger paper or on the ground. Like this, which shows, draw as many arms and spokes from the center, allocate indicators to each of the arms. So it can be a particular endorsement of family planning method by religious leaders, or it could be access to family planning clinic in the village. Okay, each arm will have scoring scale, say from 0 to 5, where 0 indicates the lowest and 5 is the highest. Then what you do is allocate a score on each indicator as felt by the participants. Join these scores to complete the diagram. So you have something like concentric circles which are joined later on by this cobweb, which gives you an understanding of basically what exactly is the issue, what are the problems, and how do people perceive what the problems are. So if you are looking at issue like what will enable more women to use modern family planning methods, so probably factors which need to look at it, whether religious persons are endorsing it or not, whether the clinics are available to them or not, whether they are accessible by the women. Sometimes you can also do force field analysis. This is used to visually identify and analyze the forces affecting the problems. So write a problem you want to discuss with the group. Ask the participant to visualize a problem situation in a state of temporary equilibrium with two sets of opposing forces. Okay, one which is pushing it and another one which is trying to improve it. Okay, ask them to list one set of forces first and followed by the another list. Let them write down or depict the forces identified on small cardboards in bold letters. Keep the sheet of paper with the problems written on it at the center and draw the line across it. Spread the card with restraining forces below and the one which is driving forces above the line. So what happens is they are able to look at it, okay, we need to make changes to resolve it. Okay, so what basically is the thing which causes drought, and what are the things actually which prevents the drought? Or it can be what exactly leads to flood situation in that community, what exactly leads to stopping of flood. So when they are able to look at it, they themselves are able to understand, okay, these are the things which we need to take care of, and this is, if suppose they are talking about drought condition, they might realize that cash crop and complete dependence on a particular kind of cropping system, monocropping, and pesticides and heavy investment on the pesticides and all that is something which is causing a situation where they don't have grains to take care of their food needs because they are not growing grains anymore. So they need cash even to buy daily grains which was easily available earlier from their own farms. So a kind of a reflective action takes place where they start thinking, is it essential to take out 2 cash crops? Can we go to some other way of looking at cropping system? Because cash crop definitely develops a kind of a cash which goes most of the time in repaying the loans and buying seeds and fertilizers and pesticides, and plus now additionally you have to buy grains which you never thought was a kind of a need to buy, because all the time you always grew grains which was there in the house. So would you rather go for grain crops? At least you won't be hungry. You might have lesser cash, but you might not have a situation where you are borrowing again and again and putting the whole thing in a cash crop which is not yielding any kind of result. So this kind of force field analysis helps in perceiving the effect of the force of the problem. Once they are satisfied with the diagram, you can ask them to bring change in the situation. They can change the force field, make the adjustment so that driving force can be reinforced and the one which is pushing into a problem situation, they can be reduced. One can also do matrix ranking. It is concerned with ranking of range of criteria against a range of comparable items, which is selected by local community members. It can be undertaken with key informants. It can be gender based to determine relative preference of men and the women. What is the significance? It presents an overall picture of the group or individual preferences. So through matrix scoring method, communities can prioritize items based on such a certain criteria. Such prioritized items by community can be linked directly to the action plans. So the methods can reflect a a causal analysis of the group or individual, their priorities, likes and dislike. So particular crop situation or particular situation may be analyzed by women in a different way and men in a different way. So when you put it in a map, in a matrix kind of ranking, you may realize that women may find a different way of resolving, whereas men can find a different way of resolving. So it is easy to revise the scores when such matrix scoring is used on the ground. Ask the participants to identify and prepare a list of issues which they think are problems. Prepare a matrix on a large sheet of paper or blackboard. Indicate the issues on left side of the matrix. Facilitate the comparison of issues with another, one another. Note the number of times each problem was preferred. Okay, so making a kind of a score. So you give a kind of a ranking to that particular problems and rank them accordingly. Encourage the discussion while the exercise is being conducted. Ask the villagers reasons for their choices. Why are they thinking that this is a priority? At the end of the exercise, briefly discuss, analyze, summarize the result together with the people. One can also have some kind of a community cafe. In some of the places they call it chai pe charcha, or chai nukkad, or chai pani charcha. So what you can do is, a community cafe it creates an atmosphere of a restaurant where all people come together. There is a host. Self-help groups use this a lot, so they once in a month they all meet together. So one woman is a host. Okay, so she provides a base, a kind of a place to sit, also prepare snacks and tea and other arrangement. Of course, everybody contributes, but that creates a kind of an ambience where people sit and actually discuss all their issues. As each issue is discussed, major ideas are recorded by the host, who reports the most common ideas which was discussed. Now, self-help group has emerged, the whole idea of self-help groups has emerged from this, where women sit together, and if they have collected money and they have basic, base amount of money with them, where they start internal lending. So when the group sits together in this kind of in a woman's house, they say, okay, there are two women who are asking for internal lending. One, the child, her daughter is, she wants to go to the school and she needs fees. She has decided to put her daughter in an English medium good school, boarding school, and this is the fee which is required. And there's another woman who says that, after a great difficulty, she has found a match for her daughter and she wants to have a dowry, and if she does not give a dowry, her marriage will break. The whole group now sits and discusses and comes to a conclusion whether sending the child to the school is more important or giving dowry to the woman, daughter is more important, and how much money needs to be given to these women. Now this discussion leads to a lot of empowerment, analysis of the problem, why this particular problem is more important than this particular another problem, set of problem, and the consensus actually empowers the women to take decision in the next chai charcha, where they probably may take up a village level problem, which may not be only personal problem. Okay, so what you do over here is identify the key issues which the community face, engage community stakeholders in meaningful discussions. One can see in the rural scenario, wherever self-help groups have got involved in the local Gram Panchayat level issues, or organizations who have encouraged tribal population to come together and discuss, okay, probably when the displacement of land for development projects are happening, these are the spaces which have been used where people have come together, when they are sitting there and having a cup of tea, eating something prepared by the host and discussing the issues which are concerning them in a non-threatening kind of. Of course, you have to take all these steps which are necessary. You have to have a place, you have to have a host, a table, or a kind of a place where people can comfortably sit. There should be some kind of food available, snacks, where people can look forward to the snacks and the tea. Everybody who comes in have to be greeted properly and invited and probably given space for them to sit. Okay, and once everybody has arrived, you need to introduce each other, explain yourself, as well as people have to understand why you are having this charcha, and then the host raises the issue. So it also helps the host, who is also community member, taking responsibility of actually hosting this. So the host keeps revolving. So every member gets a chance of hosting this chai pe charcha. So which actually is very interesting. Host summarizes the main points. Host is the one who keeps the note of all the problems. Host is the one basically who thanks and takes the leadership, or is like a chairing the whole session. And basically host summarizes everything and comes up with these issues. It almost comes to a level of decision making. Okay, this is what we discussed. Now let us decide in this way. So if it is a self-help group, which the example I gave, the host is the one who will summarize everything, and okay, as a group we feel that marriage can be postponed. The daughter's education is important. So we will talk to the girls, the bridegroom, and convince them probably next month. Just now let's have this daughter going to the school. So that is which happens. And so what happens is, after thanking, you send the summary report to all the participants. So everybody knows what exactly was the event and how the decision was taken. So sometimes the whole village gets to know, this is how it was decided. So this daughter tomorrow is going in good uniform to a boarding school, basically because the self-help group took the decision of sending that girl to the school. So okay. Sometimes you also do a resource mapping. Okay, so resource mapping is basically you are trying to understand what resources are there. Suppose you are dealing with malnourishment issue in a tribal area. So when you are using history of profiling of the community, when you are looking into the timeline and the whole evolving of the forest area and the tribal community, you might identify various plants and various food patterns which were there originally, which were actually playing a role in minimizing malnourishment. Probably all that going away is the reason for malnourishment. So what happens is, when you're doing resource mapping, you are looking at various resources which are there in and around, and you realize, okay, these were the medicinal plants which are in and around, but somehow because the group keeps migrating and coming back, this folklore or this particular knowledge about the indigenous plant which were used in the food pattern has reduced. Or maybe it is Sanskritization, where it has become fashionable to eat food which is not local. So all these things probably come up when you are doing resource mapping, and they are able to understand, okay, these are the resources. Resources can be two types. One would be physical resources, natural resources. Another could be human resources. So human resources helps you to identify, okay, we want to start some kind of educational program for the children. We have somebody who has done SSC. Oh, we have this person who is married to this woman who is just now sitting at home, but she has a tailoring certificate with her. So why not utilize all these human resources which are there? It helps in collaboration. So one village may have a tailor, another village may have a person who is capable of being a teacher. So they share resources, whereby resource mobilization takes place. It is also many times essential, when you are talking about community participation or democratic functioning in the community, to have a stakeholders analysis. So one needs to first of all understand, in a village, who are the stakeholders, or in a slum community, who are the stakeholders. Okay, or in a in a place where different kinds of people are intervening. who are the stakeholders? So you are looking at donors, you are looking at beneficiaries, you are looking at partner agencies, government, non-government organization, and the community. And probably if you are implementing a particular program where all of these people are involved, all of them become your stakeholders. So what are you doing? Basically, you are also developing institutional capacity building. Okay. So when you are doing institutional capacity analysis, what are you doing? You are looking at the history of state formation, authoritative resource and legitimacy of the state, and the relationship between economic structure and state structures. You are looking at natural and human resources, social and ethnic structures, demographic changes, regional influences, long-lasting, pandemics. Of course, you are also looking at globalization, geopolitics, global trade, and all of this to understand how do you do institutional capacity analysis. So basically what you are doing is you are looking at norms for exertion of power and authority. So if suppose, in a development project, if international, global, multinationals are involved, probably you will also realize that the power centers are not just local, they are far beyond. So social embedded norms for what government authorities should and should not do, and how public management should be performed, how do we do things here, you will be able to understand. The status and ranks are accorded to carriers of public authority. You are able to rank it and say, okay, these are the authorities and these are their powers. And you are also looking at norms governing how formalized or informalized these laws and rules are, and how compared to that are your informal sets of rules. One can also do a asset inventory. It's something like resource mapping. Sometimes you can develop a kind of a catalog of number of things which are available in the community, and also try to understand why people think that is important. Okay, in a tribal community, probably they might count logs which are just lying in and around as resources or as assets. So you need to understand why are they calling them as assets. How do you do an asset inventory? Of course, you explain them why you want to do it, randomly dividing the participants into groups. You also, it will be helpful if you are choosing a team leader, and they go and identify various assets, and then they are able to come back and identify that these are the items which are important for the community. Sometimes they may pick the item and bring back, to discuss why that item is important. Then you can have the group leader take the teams out into the community to identify assets. When the group returns, you will have a discussion in terms of why they chose certain things as asset. Invite the group leader to share their list and explain the choices. Record the list on the chalkboard and discuss it together. Collect all the lists and keep them as reference when you are working with or when you are evaluating the asset inventory. You might also feel like doing a wealth ranking. Okay, it involves group of individuals ranking their entire community wealth. Okay, so what do they call it as asset and what do they call as wealth? Okay, so like people may look at certain things as wealth because they can barter it for something else. Okay, so community practitioners encourages participants to discuss how they define these terms. How do they look at term like a wealth? Okay, because wealth and well-being of the household in the community is something which is very important and which can be identified while you are doing wealth ranking. Prepare a card, allot one card to each household, ask the informants to rank household as rich, average or poor according to the criteria they have developed. When all the cards have been sorted, ask the respondent to review the piles to make sure that the household have been classified correctly. So what happens is a person who might identify themselves as poor may not be poor according to other people, or may, other people may be able to identify them as wealthy based on their own criteria. So make a list of all the households which are classified under various categories, and then later on you will be able to understand how things can be, or how households can be stratified. Repeat the process with 3 to 5 key members of the informant. Then compute the average score for each household by adding all the scores given by the groups of informant, and then you come up with the categories. Okay, 2-3 times same particular family has been ranked as poor, and same family has been ranked as rich. So in that way you come to a common understanding of what is rich, what is poor, and what is average. Okay, so this helps in having a common understanding, and also understanding the features which people may describe as poor, rich, or average kind of households, and later on reaching out to these families also becomes easier. So in one kind of a chart which was prepared, it looked like poor household is a household with grass roofing, average household is a wooden roofing, and iron roofing is the rich household. Okay, or in an urban slum area it might be a one with the tarpaulin plastic sheet covering is a poor household. Okay, a little bit of better kind of covering is a average, and a pakka housing is somewhere where you have tin shed or tin kind of roofing. So a rich household may have a wooden wall, or may have a concrete wall. Average household may have a bamboo wall, and dried leaves may be the poor household. Rich household may own a rice mill or some kind of sugarcane mill or sugar mill or sugar factory. They might have assets like motorboats or tractor or farm implements. Or in the urban slum area they might have some kind of a mechanisms, like they have machines which can be utilized for income generating. In the rich household they might have buffaloes and cattle and things like that, whereas in the average household maybe the number of buffaloes, cows and are lesser. Maybe the rice paddy which is generated is in the lesser quantity compared to the rich household, and poor household may not have land, may not have cattle at all, or they might have just 1 acre or 1.5 acre or 2 acres of land. So in a way we have gone through a gamut of various kind of assessment tools. So if it is well planned and executed well, and certain things are kept in mind, that in one community you don't have to utilize all. Each community ask, or you can use a particular mapping pattern or assessment tool in a particular community. So this varied kind of community mapping or assessment tools have been presented to you. Keeping in mind the specificity of your own community, choose appropriate assessment mapping, and use only one or two, so that community does not get fed up of you using every possible mapping tool. So if you use it with a kind of an understanding, and you choose a particular module carefully and you follow all the steps, probably your assessment of the community takes place much more scientifically, and you get a better understanding of what the community is, how to intervene in the community. So please go through the books which gives all these diagrams and symbols, and how do you do it, how to develop a matrix plan, so that it can be very useful when you are actually working in the community. Thank you.